From News Channel 8, this is Capitol Insider with Morris Jones.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is where the federal government and the business world meet on Capitol Insider. Tonight, new questions about the email habits of top government officials. This after reports that teenage hackers may have broken into the accounts of the heads of the CIA and Homeland Security. Scott Thuman has more.
Another reported hack, and this time targeting the personal email of CIA Director John Brennan and possibly Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson, even listening to his voicemails. This Twitter user claims to represent several teenagers posting what looks like proof of sensitive government information taken out of Brennan's personal AOL account. Renewed concern today from the White House.
It does highlight the risk that all of us face.
To Capitol Hill.
No aspect of public policy is going to be immune from cyber affronts, whether that's personal, whether that's Facebook, whether that's LinkedIn, or whether that's the work they're doing in the office behind the veil of security.
The self-professed hackers claim they're angry over the U.S. treatment of Palestinians and easily accessed personal AOL and Comcast accounts, scouring them for official business.
Social security numbers, plans, you're talking about Iraq and Syria. There was a lot of, I guess, private information really.
But critics say just after months of witnessing how Hillary Clinton's private emails have come to haunt her, why, if true, would government officials keep such information on their personal accounts?
We've seen repeatedly now that officials with sensitive information are going to have to make a decision whether they should be using the same email platforms as everyday Americans.
Neither the CIA, FBI, or Homeland Security would comment other than to say that they are aware of the reports. Now, Wired magazine spoke to the teenagers claiming to be the hackers, who say that they successfully prank called Director Brennan multiple times and plan to hack other top government officials soon. On Capitol Hill, Scott Thuman, Capitol Insider.
Meanwhile, violence is escalating in Israel as the country tries to figure out a solution for the growing number of attacks. Now, some Palestinians say the only way to ease tensions is to end the Israeli occupation. Ben Wiedemann has this report.
Pull up your pants, pull up your T-shirt, turn around, show your ID. That's the only way residents of the East Jerusalem Palestinian neighborhood of Issawiya can get to the center of the city, under tough new security measures imposed by the Israeli government in the wake of a spate of stabbing attacks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly accused the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and others of inciting the violence. But ask the Palestinians at the checkpoint what's behind it all, and they seem to say the same thing: the Israeli occupation. The occupation sleeps on our chests, on our stomachs, says 63-year-old Khalid Farouk. Says this woman, occupation is oppression, oppression and subjugation. Since the June 1967 war, more than 500,000 Israelis have settled in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, often on confiscated Palestinian land. Israel set up an extensive network of roadblocks and checkpoints across the West Bank, and now walls and concrete blocks have gone up in East Jerusalem.
Occupation means that you have approximately 2.5 million Palestinians living for almost 50 years now under military administration.
The Palestinian Authority, set up after the 1993 Oslo Accords, has little authority beyond the confines of Ramallah.
Well, the occupation is the major incitement of the people. People want to live normal life. They want to feel free. I did nothing wrong.
Former Palestinian Authority Minister Ziad Abu Zayed warns that stopping the violence without addressing its causes won't cure the ills of this unhappy land.
If you have cancer, do you think that Advil can help you? It can be a pain relief for a short while, but it will not cure you. You need a real medicine to cure you, and the real medicine here is the end of the occupation.
The clashes here in Hebron and elsewhere in the West Bank continue. The attacks on Israelis also continue.
In the last 30 years, there have been 2 major Palestinian uprisings. Before, in between, and after, there have been many more flare-ups like this one going on right now. And in the absence of a final resolution to this problem, more flare-ups and more uprisings aren't likely. They're inevitable.
Expect more of the same, only worse.
In tonight's Dateline Defense, understanding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Deadly violence has once again become commonplace in the region as attacks on Israeli citizens continue to grow. Now the government is trying to find ways to protect them. For insight, we turn to our guest tonight on Capitol Insider, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer. He's a CIA-trained senior intelligence operations officer, best-selling author, and senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research.
Hey, Morris.
Tony, we've seen an increase in lone wolf attacks throughout Israel.
Right.
What's causing the new violence?
2 things. First off, you have, I hate to say it, ISIS behind the scenes trying to encourage as much mayhem as possible. This is a very simple and insidious attack, Morris. You can be walking down the street and be attacked. There's really no way to defend against it. So this is actually, by definition, a very effective form of terror. Secondly, I think you have the continuous simmering of the whole Palestinian-Israeli issue. This has not been resolved. It's not going to be resolved. So until people get serious about trying to figure out, should we go for a 2-state solution or should we do something else? Right now, there's just no progress being made at all, and ISIS is leveraging the situation.
Now, this region has been the scene of many violent clashes between the 2 groups. Have the issues changed, Tony? What's at the heart of all this violence?
The heart continues to be essentially who owns the land? Who has the right to be in that region? And it goes back literally to the dawn of modern civilization. This is one of those issues that, Morris, we've talked about this. We can't go in there and resolve it. I'm not sure if there's any easy solution, but I'll say this. The fact that we continue to have 2 separate entities coexisting and violently attacking each other is not in the best interest of anybody. It allows for the Middle East to continue to be unstable. I'd like to see some solution akin to the Northern Ireland process where people actually come back together. Right now, there's just no hope.
Some leaders within the Israeli government have called for a complete lockdown of Jerusalem's Arab neighborhoods to cut down on the violence, but others say that could lead to even more attacks. Do you have any idea what's the solution here? Is there one?
No, there's not. I mean, again, locking down will create more conditions for more violence. I think, obviously, there has to be a negotiated settlement here. You cannot have continuous warfare in these societies. And frankly, this is where the Iranians are going to kick this up, too. One of the things that's going to come from the Iranian agreement, unfortunately, is you're going to have Hezbollah moving back in to cause more mayhem, to furnish rockets to Hamas, to the Palestinians, and I think we're going to see even more chaos over the next year. Frankly, there's just no hope at this point in time. I'm not saying it's hopeless. I'm saying within the current circumstance, we have to take a new approach. I honestly don't know what that approach is at this point in time.
Tony, let's move on to Syria.
Sure.
According to new reports, U.S. officials have told pilots not to react to Russian military planes flying in Syria. Russian jets have flown very close to American warplanes, prompting the Pentagon to issue the warning. Now, meanwhile, the 2 countries continue to discuss the situation in the region. What's your take on the directive? Are we being provoked?
We are. Look, I've talked to the Pentagon directly about this, and their answer is what I actually support the idea of. Is like, we will continue to maintain the high ground. We will not be provoked. With that said, let's remember, Morris, the Russians are there because they've been asked to be there. As much as we'd like to go ahead and continue to act with impunity, it's not in the cards. We were the only ones in there fighting ISIS. We were doing airstrikes on a daily basis. That's not happening anymore because the Russians have muscled their way in. And again, as much as it's unpleasant for us to understand, the Russians are invited, we're not. So this is something the Pentagon is, as you point out, they're negotiating on a daily basis. I think there's a number of things that could be done to basically de-intensify the situation. But right now, the Russians are very much doing everything they can to basically be a bully. No doubt about that, but as long as we keep our cool, I think you will see a minimization of any potential bad outcomes. I'm not saying something bad won't happen. I'm saying we're doing everything we can to avoid it.
The Obama administration has maintained it does not want a proxy war with Putin, yet we have delivered 50 tons of ammunition to rebel groups in northern Syria. Is the U.S. sending mixed signals here?
Absolutely. The Pentagon has also talked about supporting the Kurds. We've been in meetings with the Kurds. We're having a meeting Monday with the Kurds on Capitol Hill. There is no clear forward path, and as you point out, the White House's policy is all over the map. And yes, Morris, I'm sorry, there is a proxy war now going. We're calling this essentially, we're seeing now we don't have the Warsaw Pact. We have essentially the Iranian, Syrian, Russian pact. Yeah. And I think that's what we have to understand is that as much as it is unpleasant to understand, we now have to work on what we would call an Arab NATO to counter it. We've talked about the Arab NATO several times right here on your show. You're right. So I think that's where we are reinforcing the idea we have to do an Arab NATO to counter the Russian, Iranian, Syrian influence.
This is a new topic we're going to discuss a lot more in the weeks and months to come. Right now, though, before you go, Tony, let's talk about one of your upcoming events. Right. At the Spy Museum. Next month, you'll take part in a discussion about some classic spy scenes from the movies. That's right. Give us a preview.
Well, we're going to be working with my friend Stacy London. Stacy will be reviewing a number of female Bond looks. I'll be doing the male version. And by the way, you can come as your favorite Bond villain. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you show up as there.
I'll think about it. Yeah.
But the idea is we want to make it fun, and it's a day before the premiere of Spectre, the movie. So it's the 5th of November at the International Spy Museum. It's going to be a blast. Stacy and I will be there to talk to folks, and I hope everyone will come down and join us.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Thanks. Right. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. Good luck, Tony.
Thank you.
We turn to the race for the White House straight ahead on Capitol Insider. One presidential hopeful is withdrawing from the Democratic primary after a less than stellar debate performance, but it doesn't mean he's taking himself out of the competition. We have the very latest next. But first, stocks were lower today after bleak earnings reports. Here's a look at the closing numbers from Wall Street.
I fully accept that my views on many issues are not compatible with the power structure and the nominating base of the Democratic Party. That party is filled with millions of dedicated, hard-working Americans, but its hierarchy is not comfortable with many of the policies that I have laid forth, and frankly, I'm not that comfortable with many of theirs. For this reason, I'm withdrawing from any consideration of being the Democratic Party's nominee for the presidency.
And with that, former Virginia Senator and Navy Secretary Jim Webb has withdrawn from the presidential race. Webb came under scrutiny for his performance at last week's Democratic debate and hasn't gained any ground in the polls. The former Republican said he might run as an independent. Webb's spot might not sit empty for long. There are new indications tonight that Vice President Joe Biden could enter the race, despite the latest poll numbers giving frontrunner Hillary Clinton a major boost. Kenneth Moten has this update.
Hillary Clinton is off the trail today, but her surge in the polls is being seen across the country. The new ABC News Washington Post poll has Clinton rebounding in the race for the Democratic nomination with 54%. That's 12 points higher than a month ago.
I spend between 4 to 7 hours a day every single day with the president.
And undeclared Vice President Joe Biden is far behind Clinton in this new poll. He spent the morning sitting alongside former Vice President Walter Mondale, both men talking about the importance of the vice presidency.
I want to be the last person in the room on every major decision.
A source involved in Biden's deliberations told ABC News the VP has not made a decision, but he is busy calling supporters, possibly waiting to pull the trigger on a run next week. In a CNN ORC poll, Donald Trump is working to hang on to his lead over Ben Carson and the rest of the Republican field. Trump has a 5-point lead over Carson. Carly Fiorina dropped 11 points since last month in the same poll. Trump rallied supporters in South Carolina last night.
We don't win anymore. We're going to. No, we're going to. You're going to have, I say it, you're going to have victories coming out of your ears. You may, you will. Believe me.
A Biden confidant acknowledged the odds are against them. No money, no campaign organization, and now Hillary Clinton's surge in the polls certainly doesn't help. Kenneth Moten, ABC News, Washington.
Straight ahead on Capital Insider, avoiding another debt ceiling. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew is sounding the alarm that the nation will run out of credit sooner than expected. The lawmakers passed a plan to raise the limit before it's too late. Our tax insider weighs in next. In tonight's Tax Insider, avoiding the debt ceiling. Last week, Treasury Secretary Jack Lew said the U.S. will reach its borrowing limit earlier than expected. Now he's warning Congress to act before it's too late. Joining me with the latest is David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. All right, Dave, Republicans have just unveiled a proposal to raise the debt limit through March 2017, but it comes at a price. The measure would require congressional committees to come up with a way to cut nearly $4 trillion in mandatory funding over the next decade. What's your take on this plan?
Well, first of all, they have to do something about the debt ceiling. They can't play political chicken with this, because unlike shutting down the government, not paying your debts is really going to be catastrophic financially to the country. So here we are. We're just a couple weeks away, and this bill called the Terms of Credit Act. Now, this is a great idea. It's basically saying, listen, we are willing to raise the debt limit if you cut mandatory spending by $3.8 trillion. And this is important, Mars. I'll tell you why, is that they did something similar in 2011 with the Budget Control Act, where they said, we will raise the debt ceiling if you cut discretionary spending. And guess what? We're still under the Budget Control Act. We're saving tens of billions of dollars. So it's a great way for the Republicans to say, we will do this, but there are conditions attached to it.
And there are only 2 weeks left until the nation hits the debt ceiling. President Obama has urged lawmakers to pass a clean bill, but Republicans want to include spending reforms. Some have said it's up to the outgoing House Speaker John Boehner to get the deal done. Good luck with that. Given the partisan politics on the Hill, can this be achieved?
Well, hopefully it can be achieved. And here's what has to happen, that if they pass a clean debt limit bill, what they should do is only make it for 6 months. Because we can't just pass a bill for a couple of years and say there are no conditions to passing and to raising the debt ceiling. So if they do something without these conditions, only do it temporary. Now, you know me, Morris, I don't like legislating by crisis and having all these deadlines.
Right.
But I think the debt limit is important here, is that we look at that. But if they pass this bill, the Terms of Credit Act, and we have some more fiscal discipline, then sure, do this until 2017, because this is going to help the country in the long run.
Now let's switch gears, Dave, to another political fight that you and I enjoy talking about, the Export-Import Bank. Next week, Congress will vote to reauthorize the institution after its charter expired in June. We thought the bank was dead and gone. What happened? How is it on the docket again?
Well, Halloween's next week, so this is really appropriate, because the Export-Import Bank was dead. We killed it on June 30th. But,
so we thought.
But it's coming back to life. It's the zombie agency that refuses to die. But here's what's happening, is this is getting a vote on the House next week because of what they call a discharge petition. And what this is usually the minority party uses this to get legislation to the floor so they can vote on it. But a Republican is doing this, because a Republican, his name is Stephen Fincher from Tennessee, he really wants this legislation to pass. He wants the Export-Import Bank to come back. So this discharge position, it's not used very often, Morris. Let's get that straight, that, you know, the last time it was used was 13 years ago. In the past 80 years or so, it's been used maybe 5 or 6 times. So this is really not the typical way to pass legislation, but Fincher is desperate. He wants the Export-Import Bank to come back, and this is going to be a really big fight amongst Republicans.
He must have a major client or corporation in Tennessee.
Absolutely.
That's what it all boils down to. Moderate Republicans, John Boehner, Democrats, including President Obama, they want the bank reauthorized. Politics makes strange bedfellows. Do you think this is going to happen?
Here's the problem, is that John Boehner this past summer was opposed to the Export-Import Bank as Speaker of the House. He's still Speaker, but obviously his days are numbered. So he has no political capital to worry about. He doesn't have to worry about the fiscal conservatives or anyone, you know, in that right wing of the party. So he has more leverage now, or he may actually want to bring the Export-Import Bank back, and because he won't feel any repercussions. He's gone. He's not only not Speaker, but he's leaving Congress. So there may be a push by him to do this. Now the Senate is a whole different deal. Is that Senator Mitch McConnell? There was a vote this past summer, and he said one vote only to bring back the bank. They had the vote, so we'll see if Senator McConnell holds true to this and keeps a vote from happening in the Senate.
All you have to do is know who the constituencies are and follow the money, and then find out which congressmen or senators are voting for this, and it all boils down to that. Give us a sneak peek for the next time you're here. I know you're doing some research on the infamous D.C. trolley, which is yet to be up and running, but you're working on tracking some money there.
We did. So we sent a FOIA request to the D.C. Department of Transportation. Spent a couple $1,000s on it, but it was worth it to get this information. And Morris, we have 4,000 pages of information on marketing of the D.C. streetcar. Now let's remember that the streetcar is the 8th Street corridor, and it's running up and down the street with no passengers. There's still no passengers on this thing. It's cost millions upon millions of dollars, and we asked for something very specific. We want to look at the marketing and how much they've spent on those ridiculous flyers they're putting on everyone's cars, website costs, media costs. So we want to see how much are the taxpayers spending just for marketing of a trolley that doesn't work.
That's going to be next time you're on Capital Insider. In the meantime, David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. See you next time, Dave.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break right now, but even when we're not on the air, you can follow us on the web at the Capital Insider blog on WJLA.com or Capital Insider on Twitter. We're back in 2 minutes. That's the latest tonight from Capital Insider. I'm Morris Jones. Thanks for being with us. Join us Wednesday night at 8 and 11. We'll have the latest on the new deal between Russia and the U.S. as it applies to the military operation in Syria. Plus, could there be new developments regarding Paul Ryan and the House Speaker's job? Our political insider will be here with all the news. Till then, keep it here on News Channel 8.